just the chain, all the debris. It took down a lot of trees and all that stuff, but we were without power for a couple of days when it was really cold, but got through it, and it's all good. The run streak continues, so
yeah, it's
that's
all
awesome.
good. So we were kind of joking with some friends and family that we lived through Hurricane Ian, as you guys know, and then this week, not as severity, right? But the difference was it's cold, but during the hurricane, it was much warmer. Wasn't
Yeah, losing
wasn't bad
power when it's
when it's
freezing
cold.
outside is a little different.
Yeah,
So
we
that
woke
was
up one morning. It was 51 in our bedroom when we woke up. We liked sleeping in cool environment, but not that cold. So anyway. So we're back today, and we're going to go into kind of some running stuff again on how to improve running economy as runners, especially for us masters runners.
this is as I say, the holy grail, because we want to do those faster paces, but to be able to do that, you have to be efficient. So it doesn't feel like you're dying for those faster paces. So endurance athletes, runners, cyclists, everybody, this is what makes or breaks you is your running economy. So
Yeah, so exactly. So we'll get into some stuff here, and we want to thank you guys. We're going to talk a little bit about last week, but yeah, here's what we're going to talk about today: how to improve a running economy as masters runners, especially. And as we say each and every week, none of this stuff's medical advice, stuff that we research, that we share with you guys, stuff that we practice in either nutrition, strength training, just overall well-being. And we advise you to always take that and do your own research. And we just want to make you think a little bit, right? That's the whole point of this, is think for yourself and do your own research and work with your doctor, right? So
always.
Because each week I'm feeling stronger than ever, and that's what we want you guys to feel as well, because it's critical. So just a recap of last week, thanks again for the feedback. I did it was just me and our colleague Ali from the UK, and we got some really, really good feedback. So as I shared, we're going to do more of these in the future. So it'll be a variety of topics, but this was one to kick it off, and it was really good. And Ali talked about the importance of sleep for recovery, obviously sleep hygiene. Watch the devices. It's easier said than done. And caffeine. And then he has a program where you can go there, runtips.us/OJ. And if you use code RIMP, you get a 10% discount. So Ali was kind enough to do that. And because the feedback was so positive, we're going to have him come back again, because there's so much we can't do everything in a 30-minute conversation about stuff just in general. As you see here on the screen, he's got a whole nutrition program similar to ours, but he works more with entrepreneurs and just people in high performance athletes, because he's trained actually some people who've been on the Tour de France, some professional footballers or soccer players in the UK, and just about your mindset movement. So all stuff we talk about, he comes at it from a different perspective. So it's good to hear.
Always good to hear, and you'd be like-minded, people. It's all about health. It's all about, we're getting older. That's inevitable, but it doesn't have to be a bad thing. It doesn't have to be such a bad, oh God, that what's going to happen. But we're getting wiser. We're getting more disciplined, where we have the discipline to do the things we need to do and the strength. So putting it all together, like I said, he does it brilliantly, and as I say, and love hearing him talk too. But
yeah, so that was good. Well, thanks again for the feedback, guys. So today we're going to talk about, again, running economy, and really, what is it, right? It's just the simplistic is your efficiency with your oxygen, being able to run. And
yeah, if you Google it, the technical term is some mumbo jumbo. So, but what it really means is how much oxygen or energy do you use to maintain a certain pace. That's about all you need to know. And if that doesn't make sense to you, it's a fuel efficiency we talk about in a car. If you have an economic car, you can get 40 miles to the gallon versus getting 10. So same gallon, same gallon. So same energy. How far can you get on this pace going that? So basically, just a way to look at it. So that's why, like I said, endurance runners, this is what it's all about. If you're performing at that high level, you have to be able to perform at that high level for that distance, for cyclists and for, distance runners. It's a huge part. So it's a lot of things to it. It's complicated. It's factorial, as they say, but there's some key things that we can do. We're not performance athletes, but what do? We take that information, we take the things that they do, and simplify the things that we can implement that makes sense in what we do as recreational runners.
Yep, exactly. And as we say all the time, we want to make sure as we get older that we are running to stay injury resilient and running the most efficiently we can, right?
Exactly. Because, it is the easier you can make running, because running is always going to be hard, but we want to be, the more efficient you are, the easier it is, the better it is to be able to keep those paces. So
again, really comes down to how much energy you're using to maintain a certain pace, right? That's the simplistic terms, the definition that we like in that regard. So, and you'll hear a big buzzword about VO2 max, all this technical mumbo jumbo, and really, as masters runners, it doesn't matter to us.
And honestly, when they did study athletes, they just assumed, that's what they do all the studies on is the elite athletes, and they found equal performers with VO2 maxes in the 60s and in 100. So it's not indicative of your performance. So it's not something. The VO2 max works out are really hard workouts that are at the top level of that can cause the most injury because they take the most amount of effort. So it's not exactly something that it doesn't even really matter. So trying to figure it out what it is, and if you have it, if it's good or not, it's not really anything to worry about. We're going to tell you some simpler things that you can that will improve your running economy.
Yeah, exactly. So here we're gonna jump right into that in terms of how to improve it, right, as we get older. So running technique is everything. I mean, it's our key portion, I should say.
Yeah, and it's you can't make big changes in your gait and how you run. And we know all different levels of, people. If you watch a marathon, especially at the end or whatever, you see people running in all different kinds of ways. Your body can make that happen with a lot of different things going on. So it's not one size fit all, but there's techniques that that do apply to everybody. And one is expending. Economy is about being efficient. So being efficient means not wasting energy. You can waste a lot of energy with your hand positioning, especially when you get tired. You don't want to be crossing over. You don't want to be doing exaggerated motions. And it's not forward motions with your arms. It is the back. And the simplest way, if someone's standing behind you and you don't want them, you're going to be kind of elbowing them. So it's that motion is your arm motion. Or another easy cue that people use is think of it as like drumsticks, like that. You want to keep not crossing over the midline, like you're drumming on that, but it's that backward motion that you have to keep that as compact. You don't want your elbows coming out. You don't want them crossing over. You see crazy things. I see people almost like they're swimming out there. I don't know what's going on, but all it is, and they're still running, it's fine, but you're just sucking energy. Remember, you want to be as
efficient as possible
energy, because all that energy builds up and all that you're using, and that you will fatigue. Fatigue is going to happen. We want being more efficient is going as long as we can before that fatigue really sets us in and starts to drag us down. So
yeah, and the arm positioning is a critical thing. You probably notice that subconsciously if you've ever had a time where you're either running up a hill or you're at the end of your run and you're just not quite there yet, and you just feel your arms moving around.
Or watching a marathon.
Or what? That's a better, We've all seen that.
You've literally seen how all of this just falls apart.
Yeah.
And they feel like they're dying because they are, because the fatigue is literally, you can just see it on them and in their form.
And head and shoulders is another factor, right? So you got to make sure that you try to. This is why we're so focused on strength training. We're going to dig into that in just a minute here, but your head and shoulders are critical to your running economy.
Your head, for every 1 inch forward, it adds 10 pounds. So if you've been out running, especially on trails, for some reason, now if you're trail running and there's things that you have to look at the ground, yes. But on the road, whether it's on a flat trail, whether it's people oftentimes are looking down for some reason, like the ground is going to change or something.
Well, you have to be careful of potholes and things like that.
But it is that motion down. You want your gaze out and up. Because that, like I said, all of that 30 degrees, you're looking at 30 pounds. So an extra 30 pounds on your body, increasing that, all that it is sucking energy. Having your shoulders tensed up like that tension in your shoulders, sucking energy. So, and a lot of times these things happen without even realizing. So you have to make those little mental checks like, okay, just up, set them back, relax. Think of having, I know you're running, it doesn't feel like you should be relaxed, but your upper body should be relaxed and your gaze forward.
Yeah, exactly. Hip symmetry, again, this goes back to that whole body positioning, right? So this goes back to a lot of stretching we've talked about and strength training, because if your hips are out of line or your hips are dropping, that's going to impact your ability to have better efficiency with your running, better energy, which is what we're trying to conserve, right? Yeah. And become stronger. So
ideally videotaping yourself, because like I said, a lot of times you can think you're going along great or whatever. If someone videotapes you and you see what it looks like, you see what, and that hip drop, that tiny bit of hip drop, the amount of energy your body is taking to stabilize your body, to keep your hips stable. If you're oscillating, I mean, they have those things on your Garmin and stuff like that. That's hard for people to realize, but you want your hips level. The easiest way to see that is either run in front of a mirror. If you have a treadmill that has a mirror, have someone videotape you, whichever way you can do that, to make sure your hips are level when you're running. That little bit, even just a little bit of that switch back and forth, A, is going to give you lower back pain and cause some problems, but B, suck more energy that you don't have.
Yeah, exactly. And then the last one here is you got to be careful of overstriding, right? It's easy. It almost seems counterproductive because you're like, well, I want to run faster, so if I stride longer, but you got to be careful with that, obviously.
Yeah, and heel striking got a big, that was demonized for a while, but then they videotaped marathons. At the end of the marathon, 80% of people were heel striking. So they know 80% of those people are not getting injured. So it's not the heel striking. It's where you land. It's whether you're midfoot, forefoot, wherever it is, or on the heel. It's how, if you're landing under your center of gravity, that's going to be okay. If you are heel striking with your leg extended out by overstriding, that is the braking force. That is, and you can see it if you watch someone, they're going to have a straighter leg coming out in force. So if you try to run faster and you notice that is what you're doing to run faster versus increasing your stride, that's where you can get into trouble. So another, like I said, filming yourself, having someone film you is a good way to see how you're doing that.
And, kind of ties back in, you get your cadence and your stride rate, right? So these are all things that are going to impact your running economy.
Yeah, increasing your cadence. There's a lot of talk about that. Everyone's, finally said, no, it's not 180 for everybody. It is individual. We're both taller, so ours are going to be naturally slower. But when you get below 160, 150 or whatever, that's just more ground contact. So if you can increase that up to 60, up to 70, 170, slow increment increases with everything. But that is less contact that you have with the ground. The key is doing it, ideally training on a treadmill to do it, to set it at a certain thing. It's not about running faster. It's about turning your feet over faster. So people, if you're not careful, all you're doing is increasing your stride length to run faster to do this. And that's kind of not the point. So either run in place, run on a treadmill at a fixed thing, trying to increase your turnover. That will, slowly doing that will actually help make running easier. It'll feel a little weird at first, but that'll help to increase that economy, which will help you to be running faster at a more comfortable pace.
Which is the whole goal here, right? Yeah. So, because again, you really want to think about this, increase your mileage. That's the goal, right? You want to do it safely and you want to be able to do it more efficiently, right? So the better runners, you're going to have to run more miles, right? We just know this, right? It just comes down to putting more miles on the feet.
Yeah, it's if you want to get better at running, you got to run more.
Yeah, and ideally you want to run year round. Some people take the winters off, and that's really, we don't recommend that, but that's your choice, obviously.
Yeah, you got to figure out what works for you. But statistically, when they study everybody, that they know running year round works better for them. They know trained athletes for their season, their running economy is higher than their off season. So if you can keep that level of still doing your long runs, not maybe as long, not maybe as going up, coming down, going up, coming down, and specifically like that, but keeping those longer runs in the mix every week of how you do it safely year round really is better for your overall running economy. So
yeah,
and if you can make it happen, make it happen.
Yeah, and as we say all the time, but this is so indicative, not only to your running, but everything in life, really just follow the 80-20 rule. Try to be conscious of that. If you are, you're going to notice being more efficient. You really will.
And that efficiency is that aerobic capacity. You cannot be more efficient. That's why running economy is several different factors, but you cannot be more efficient if you don't have enough energy or oxygen being pushed to make this happen. That's the whole part of it. How do you get more? You build your aerobic engine. It's the amount of your aerobic capacity that you have to be able to go that distance. That is the key part of being able to deliver more oxygen. Those long, that mileage, 80% of it at that easy pace, the conversational pace, that boring pace that,
have a conversation as you're running. You should be able to talk on the phone or talk with somebody if you have a running partner.
But that's going to build, like I said, the mitochondria you need, the extra capillaries, all that to deliver more oxygen efficiently to to the muscles and to you need to feed these runs to be able to do that. So always following the 80-20 rule, slowly increasing your mileage. Our body loves slow, progressive loads. Too fast, too soon, too much.
Right.
That's the avoiding that. You can do these things safely.
But it does take time to know. This is why we encourage you to run year round. We run year round. And if you just be consistent like anything in life, you're going to have all these benefits.
Absolutely. And you're already, most of us are master runners, senior master runners. So you've been running 4 decades. There in and of itself, if you've been consistently running 4 decades, that builds the most running economy. So you've already gotten, when I was marathoning and doing a ton of marathons and all of that, I was only working at one part of that. So I did get efficient at running that slow pace for a very long time. And I could do a marathon without even needing much recovery because my body was just so used to running at that. Now I didn't work on speed or strength or any of the other things I was supposed to do. So it stayed at that same thing. Not what you want to do. By working these other, aspects of it, you can not only get to where you can comfortably run longer, faster, or run longer, but you can actually run faster at that pace.
Yeah, exactly. So as we talk all the time, that's as masters runner, we need to focus on strength training as much as you might want to cringe. The reality is when you stop and think about it and you do that little bit of strength training, just being consistent, you'll be shocked at the improvement in your energy level, right? Because the reality is 20% of your energy, as we talked earlier about your head, your shoulders, is used just stabilizing everything.
Yeah, and that's that hip, that frontal plane is a side-to-side motion. That is your hip. If you are hip dropping even the slightest bit of degrees or whatever, sucking energy. So your body spends 20% trying to stabilize in that position, stabilizing your, that pelvic, that hip, lumbopelvic hip complex there. Being able to be stronger with all the muscles that are trying to do that and being more efficient and having the strength to be able to do that is going to make that amount of energy less. So you don't want to, when you're weak, your body's having to work a lot harder to keep everything, from you being injured. That's what it wants. It's trying to stabilize. It's trying to do all this, putting this all together without you even knowing about it. But the stronger you can be, the stronger your foundation is of being able to do. Remember, respecting that running is a high impact sport, no matter what speed you're going. So.
Right. And again, by strength training, you're going to increase your neuromuscular efficiency, right? Which, as we've talked before, as we get older, we start losing muscle. It's just the reality of how our bodies work, right? So we need to counter that and work on strength training so we can increase that neuromuscular efficiency, which is going to let us run more. It's going to be easier to run is the bottom line, right?
Yeah, you need that muscle memory or whatever, that connection. It's a whole machine running. The more efficient it is, the more that connection is, the more you're doing it. Strength training really aligns, especially if you're really doing targeted, strength training, and really being mindful while you're doing it, not just going through the motions and trying to check it off your list. Pay attention to what you're actually doing for the exercises that you're doing. That creates that neuromuscular communication. The more efficient your brain is doing that, remember, the more you do it, the more efficient it becomes at it. Same, but that's why the consistency with strength training is huge.
Right. And you got to focus on your core, which is critical to running. You don't realize how important your core is.
That's what's stabilizing all this. If you have low back pain, runners, staggering amount of runners have low back pain. It's because you don't have a strong enough core. If you get done with your run, especially one of your longer runs, and you go to bend over to get in your car or pick something up and you feel like you're 110 years old and you can't do that, this is a sign that you need to work on your core.
Yeah, exactly. So there's some key exercises to help with that. So the anti-rotational exercises, there's a bunch of them.
Yeah, exactly. We went over some of these, I think, on a video a while ago too. But just some, key ones. Anything that, plank are great exercises. You can do so many variations. Regular plank, once you get past a minute, you need to be doing variations. Right. And most of you guys should be able to do a minute holding regular plank.
Right. So shoulder taps is a variation of this, which you should know. You're in your plank position and you're just going to tap the opposite shoulder with your hand. That one, you'd be surprised if you do that. It's a lot harder than you think.
You have to keep the big key with that is stabilizing your hips and keeping them. You're not rocking side to side. I've seen people try to do it fast, but they're turning and turning. All of these anti-rotational things, you have to think of keeping your hips straight, keeping your hips. And that's what you're doing when you're running. You're keeping your hips straight. You're keeping them forward. These are the exercises that are going to help with that.
Yeah. And then the high plank with a weight drag, meaning you have a small weight and you just drag it across. You're in that plank position. Underneath your body. Right. Exactly. Yeah. Still staying in that push-up plank position. Right.
So it basically all these, you're having one hand or one leg on the ground and the other one doing either tapping, doing something, pulling, something that's going to force you to have to correct from wanting to drop down. So your initial thing is you're going to want to drop to the side that you lift your hand or you lift your leg. Right. So fighting that force is what really builds this.
Right. And then the bird dog one is just, again, that's kind of a one-armed Superman where your one leg, opposite leg and arm is in the air and you're just going to go back and forth in that as slow as you can. That one, again, is going to focus you because your body's going to want to dip and you want to try to focus on.
That's a more advanced move. That is really hard. You can try just one arm up, hold that for 30 seconds. You can try one leg up, hold that for 30 seconds. And then eventually you will get stronger and you'll be able to do the bird dog where you have opposite arm and opposite leg being balanced.
Yeah, and then single legs, the Bulgarian split squats, one of my favorite exercises when we go to the gym. Or you can do that at home too, is you just need something behind you.
Yeah, you don't need a lot of weight for this. And actually body weight for this for most people is still challenging.
Yeah, it was for me when I was working on some of my stability. I had to have a chair in front of me just to get my balance. And then once I got that, it's like, okay, you can escalate fairly quickly.
But always work on balance first before you add weights.
Use common sense.
I had to keep reminding him. I know. He's all over the place. I'm like, you need to drop the weights. It's like
my ego was getting in the way there, but then I stopped. And I listened to my coach.
Exactly. You can't. You have to. And Bulgarian split squats are an advanced thing. If that is too much and you're wobbling too much or whatever, you're going to do a split stance with just a squat. Then you progress. Remember, it's always progression. So start where you're at. But any single leg, remember, running is basically thousands of single leg hops. So you need to have single leg strength, and doing these exercises actually can correct some of those asymmetries that you might have that might be causing those hip drops or causing issues.
And you got the single leg deadlift, step up, so the knee drive. So basically in that kind of runner position, but lift a leg up. So you want to try
step
to do
up
those
to a surface or whatever and drive the knee up as you're doing that.
Exactly. So. And always be careful. Just use common sense. Make sure you're balanced. Don't put yourself in a position where you're going to hurt yourself, because that's the last thing we want to do, right? As myself, I'm still recovering from my wrist injury, getting much better. I'm going to run tomorrow, as a matter of fact. Yeah. Actually, I might even run today. So bilateral strength right here, the hip thrusts. Again, that's if you have a chance to get to a gym, that's a big one.
This is the number one exercise. If you have to do the hip thrust and the Bulgarian split squats are probably the number one. For glute activation. We need glute strength for running. That's a huge part of it. But those are difficult things that one works on asymmetry. Both work on glute strength. Doing the bilateral, which just on 2 feet, means you can add the weight. You can progressively. You need an exercise where you can progress the weight. The hip thrusts are great because it's that hip, flexion that we need. But you can add a lot of weight to this and progress it.
You'd be surprised how much your glutes will feel that. Just shocked. And again, it's critical for our core strength.
You do, if you're doing all that, you need to grab one of the trainers. You need to have someone with you that can show you how to do these. But if you can add weight with a barbell and do all that, it's a great, like I said, it's probably the number one strengthening glute exercise that you can do.
Yeah, and then squats, of course, and deadlifts. Those are ones that a lot of people cringe at, but they're needed to strengthen your lower body, and which is efficient for running. It's all about efficiency, right? And then lunges. If you can't do the hip thrust, you don't have access to a gym, you can do air squats at home. Deadlifts you can do without any weights as well, and lunges. Those are ones you could do at home very easily and very safely. And that's the key thing, is doing it safely.
Absolutely. You can, like I said, you can make all those harder by changing the surface, changing the tempos. There's lots of things that you can do versus having to have equipment. But if you do, it's ideal.
Right. Now, just real quick to recapping how to improve. We're going to get to the rest of these here. Strides are important, as Patty talks about in her lives all the time. She does them. How many times a week do you do strides now?
I just do strides once a week.
Once a week, okay, yeah.
I'm adding in a speed workout.
Yeah, and if you can find a hill, I would strongly recommend trying to do that, because hill sprints are really
they work strength, they work form, and they work speed.
And your speed, exactly. Now, when we were in Florida, Florida's obviously flat as a pancake. We found a bridge, so we ran over a bridge a couple times, right? That's just the way. You might have to improvise. And if you don't, then you can try to go to the gym and move the treadmill up and down as best you can. Again, just do whatever you're capable in your environment. You have access to.
But and interval training at different ranges. You can do the shorter distances, the 400 meters to 800 meters to 1600 meters, but varying that at your 5K pace or your 10K pace or your half marathon pace. Varying those speed workouts at those, the shorter distances are obviously going to be your 1 mile, pace. But those are the harder effort, 90% of your max type intensity. So they don't have to be super long, but having that intensity in those short spurts, that's why the hill sprints, a steep 20-second hill sprint, and it has to be steep, that, like I said, those recruits those different types of muscles or whatever. The more your body your brain is used to recruiting those muscles, the more it can still recruit those later in that race when you want to kick it in at the end or whatever. And this, like I said, just builds your overall efficiency. And luckily, you don't need to do hours and hours and hours of this. This is the 20%, the small amount that
will make a big impact.
Huge impact. And actually, I can mix things up and make it fun.
Yeah, it's good to have a little bit of variety, right? And you want to try to do some race pace workouts eventually as well. Again, Patty said, stresses is the lower, longer paces are going to actually allow you to run faster. So if you want to run in a race, but you want to try to mix that in every once in a while too.
And this would be a race specific type of workouts. You can't just, this is all,
can't go all out.
Yeah. Strides are something you can do every week. Everyone should do strides once a week. No matter what level you are, they're super easy. You do them after an easy run. Doing those weekly, if you're not worried about it, if you don't do anything else, try to do that. Hill sprints are the next things that are easier things to implement for speed work. As long as you've been strength training, you have to be strong enough to do these workouts, remember, safely. And then it's still the lower range of the 400-meter repeats, the half-mile repeats. Those are the smaller distances. When they studied the elites and stuff, this had the most impact. So they don't have to be long and grueling. They just have to be at the intensity at the level that you can do them at that intensity, because you've been doing your easy runs at an easy actual pace.
Yep, exactly. And then lastly is, again, plyometrics. We talked a little bit about with some of that strength training, but there's variations of that with some different running drills.
Yeah, and these can be part of just your warm-ups.
Yep.
It's like high knees, you can do the grapevine, you can do the bounds, A-skips, and all that. This is just something you can kind of work in. Or after one of your easy runs where you're already warmed up, do 10 minutes, of just some form drills or some plyometrics where you're just squat jumping, or, it doesn't have to be crazy or anything, jumping up on huge boxes or something. We're not talking about that, but just doing short bursts of these things just to get those different muscles recruited that need to be. So you need the slow twitch, you need the fast twitch, you need all of this in concert, working together. The more it's used to working together and pulling all these things together, the better you will be when you're asking to do it for a long distance, like, with a race or something.
Yeah, exactly. So in closing out, as we say each week now, all this goes back to your nutrition, your strength training, your mindset, all this stuff and your recovery, right? So even though I've got on here to offer customize your macros, really, if you want any help with any of this stuff on any of the either foods, or just you need a little bit of help with some of this stuff, you can go to runtips.us/call and set up a call with Patty and I. We're more than willing to help you guys out just to get you going. You'd be surprised with just that little bit of outside advice can help you.
Just knowing where to start. Half the time people just, if you feel overwhelmed, you're not going to start anything. So sometimes it just takes a little nudging, maybe a little.
Just an outside perspective, which is one of the reasons we had Ali come on last week, and we're going to have more interview guest podcasters coming on just for things like that, to give you a different perspective, right? Yeah. We would be providing a different perspective to you guys, right? So just keep that in mind, that it's always here for you guys. Go to runtips.us/call. Mm-hmm. And again, just that perspective, because you're just stuck, you're not quite sure. And having someone to talk about that's a big deal. It'd be really helpful. So that is always there for you guys. So with that, we're a little bit long today, but that's okay. So we'll, I guess we'll say, get ready for next week.
Happy Saturday, everyone. Have an awesome, awesome day, because you absolutely deserve it. And we'll see you next week.
See you guys.